Soldiers marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempest rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whate'er may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely, assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things, give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait, her strength unequal to her task. Rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod, as brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. Good evening.
Let's edify.
Howdy, howdy.
Wow. That was anticlimactic. We're going to have to figure a way to link all three.
I'm sorry.
We're going to have to, no. We're going to have to figure out a way to link all three greetings together so that it flows.
Every time
CJ
I
needs to
fail.
go.
Every time.
CJ needs to say professionalism and shenanigans. I go, good evening. You say, let's edify. And CJ says, professionalism and shenanigans. With professionalism and shenanigans.
Yes, the whole CM staff.
Yes.
Do you guys remember what tonight is? Well, I know you guys do, but do they?
I was like, who are you talking to here?
CJ, are you having a little bit of a misconnect there?
Do y'all remember what tonight is? Do you know why we're all three of us streaming? Let's see who's been paying.
1, 2, 3, hello.
How about 1, 2, 3?
Hello.
Hello.
CJ can go. Can you hear me now?
No. If you try to do that, we'd get sued by Sprint. We could always do the Three Stooges, like Sam's suggesting. Like, O'Shea goes hello, and then we go up half a step, go hello, and then the third one of us goes hello, and then we all go hello at the same time. Teresa says, to be honest, no, she doesn't remember.
What? Does anybody remember what we do on Wednesdays now?
CJ, Teresa leaves the past in the past.
There we go.
Yay!
Yeah, somebody remember.
And it's not even Fun Friday.
Hooray!
Hooray.
CJ, that was a little lackluster on your hooray there.
I know. It gets a lackluster because it's not Fun Friday.
Hooray.
When it's Fun Friday,
hooray!
Hooray! Reba got close. We take a chapter from a certain book and briefly explain. We take more than one chapter, but she about nailed it on the head.
Well, she said you each take a chapter.
Okay. I misread that. So.
Didn't you misread that?
Ooh. Teresa says, you know me.
For that, we're going to get this bad boy out.
Remember CJ being our taskmaster?
Well, I trust she hasn't written her last book yet, Reba. But the last one she's gotten published is
All of My Tomorrows?
I think so, yeah. All My Tomorrows. We've got 3 of them out. If I Should Die, As a Lovely Song, and All My Tomorrows. So that's the order that it goes in. All My Tomorrows.
Yes, Teresa, most likely.
Hello, Angie.
I found out the other day.
By the way, hello, Reba. Hello, Sister T. Hello, Sam. And now, hello, Angie.
Hello, everybody.
Do you all have maybe in your praise to the Lord is my light?
Have what?
The Lord is my light.
No.
It's not an.
I don't even have to. I don't even have to look at that one.
I discovered the other day they actually have a name for the day that comes after tomorrow.
The
It's
next
called
day.
Overmorrow.
Yo, got. Alright, I think we can make that work. What about you and my all in all? You and my
I know that song, and I think maybe one of our songbooks might have it. Check
I
the
think
gray and the praise for the Lord, but um,
or we could do someday. Someday.
Barnes and Noble only had 2 of her books. Which 2? They're supposed to have the 3rd already. All 3 of them should be available through Barnes and Noble. I'll have to.
What was I looking for?
You are my all in all.
Well, the Great Book does have it at 484.
Teresa says, I know how long winded Brother Levi is and how short winded CJ and O'Shea is.
Am I short-winded?
Has any of you guys watched Pulpit Times?
Yeah, watch it this week. I'm gonna prove you wrong, Share. I already know how long it's gonna be. 30
He's
minutes.
psychic.
30 minutes. You watch. It'll be exactly 31
Hey,
minutes.
I've preached 30-minute sermons. I've preached 25-minute sermons. I have yet to preach a short one like the preacher in North Avenue Irregulars. His sermon was this. I'll even give it for you. Jephthah was a mighty man of valor. Let us learn from his example. Let us pray. The little old lady turns and looks at her husband and says, You'll never fall asleep during one of his sermons.
Do you guys know all the wacky alternation parts? With the...
No. It's not all of my tomorrows. It's all my tomorrows. And that is the one that is the third one. All my tomorrows. I know, Mom keeps throwing me for a loop because she chose to go with to leave off the but she wanted to keep it the same word count in each of the titles. If I should die, as a lovely song, all my tomorrows. It's still syllabically correct.
Syllable.
Syllabically. Yeah. Anyway. Syllabically.
Yeah, syllable. This is what happens when you put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Syllable.
Yeah. That's what happens when the general sees the troops peering through his binoculars.
That's just too many goofy sentences.
Sam, did you get your book yet? I don't know. You said it takes a while. All right. We'll see when.
Question is, where's she going to take it?
Can you send Alyssa in here to get the gray book for you?
Did you find it in the blue book?
I did.
Okay. Alicia, gray book, please. You are my strength when I am weak. You are the treasure that I seek. You are my all in all. Seeking you as a precious jewel, Lord, to give up I'd be a fool. You are my all in all. Jesus,
You my
Lamb
treasure,
of God,
you
worthy is your name, precious Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Taking my cross, my sin, my shame,
Rising again.
then I bless your name. You are
You
my
are
all in all. When I fall down, you pick me up. When I am dry, you fill my cup. You
You
are my all in all. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is your name. Worthy is your name. Worthy is your name. Now, I did most of that from memory. Most of it.
Nobody helped me with the alternating parts, guys.
That's because Shea doesn't know it, CJ.
Oh.
never been to camp,
This
remember?
is the very first time he's ever sung that song.
No, we've sang it once before or twice
Probably in the truck. I tried to teach it to you.
in the truck. Yeah, and I think I remember Pete singing it once. Trying to.
3 months by post office. Wow. So
He tries to
you
get it sent by LBC. It would be cheaper and quicker, but we don't know how to get it sent by LBC. All we can do is send it via the post office, maybe UPS.
so by the time Levi finishes, you'll have your book.
You mean by the time, by the way that that's going, by the time he gets done with, by the time Nick gets done with Revelation, he'll probably have his prophecy book.
3 months. September, October, November.
One can hope.
And then that way you can go through the replays and fill it out.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into the book of Hosea. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. I want to thank O'Shea and CJ for jumping in and taking over when I couldn't, and continuing even though I couldn't be here. Hosea chapter 7 is where we begin with this prophecy. It is, as a recap, kind of a recap, it is the book of Hosea takes place of about 25 to 30 years. And it deals mainly with the northern kingdom. There may have been a couple of mentions of Judah, but it's mainly it's mainly about the northern kingdom, and pretty much covers the last few years of the Northern Kingdom. We do have mention within the passages of Hosea of Jeroboam the second and the end of the reign of the descendants of Jehu. But we pick up tonight in chapter 7, reading through it really quickly. Did we? Is that what we began with? Reading through our chapter?
No, we just kind of
Picked through it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I did when I did my last chapter because it was only 10 verses.
the overall theme of chapter 7 is that God wanted to provide mercy for Israel, but he could not because it was Israel was preventing it through their constant rebellion, their constant adultery, and wine bibbing. So things that God had commanded against, they were constantly doing. There are, he kind of sets the tone with verse 1. When I would have healed Israel, then the iniquity of Ephraim was discovered, and the wickedness of Samaria. For they commit falsehood, and the thief cometh in, and the troop of robbers spoileth without. So God wanted to extend mercy, wanted to extend healing unto Israel, but that's when it became apparent Ephraim's iniquity and Samaria's wickedness. Other, important verses in there, it would be like verse 2. They consider not in their hearts that I remember their wickedness. Now their own doings have beset them about. They are before my face. These people had not considered the fact that God is omnipotent. God knew what they were doing. Just like we cannot hide our sin from the Almighty God. And it's something that we as children of God should be constantly aware of, just like those children of God should have been constantly aware of. See, Israel didn't consider in their hearts that I remember all their wickedness. I know it. I know what they've done. It's ever before my face, he says. Other verses in here, you can see God compares them as adulterers, or as he calls them adulterers, comparing them to an oven that's heated by the baker, who then stops stops the bread from raising after he's kneaded the dough. Well, that's kind of pointless, isn't it? If you're trying to bake bread, you want the bread to raise after you knead the dough. But the baker has the oven heated and then stops stirring the fire. He stops it. Well, bread needs a warm place in order to raise. And so they're all adulterers, and they are stopping the mercy of God because they are they're not letting his mercy come upon them because they're keeping the adultery going. They're continuing to sin. Verse 5 is where it shows them wine bibbing. In the day of our king, this is the king again of the northern kingdom, the princes have made him sick with bottles of wine. He stretches out his hand with the scorners. For they have made ready their heart like an oven, whiles they lie in wait. Their baker sleepeth all the night. In the morning it burneth as a flaming fire. Oh, it's too hot to put bread in. And they are all hot as an oven, and have devoured their judges. All their kings are fallen. There's none among them that calleth unto me. So the picture here is of their constant rebellion, their constant adulteries. They're constantly in their cups and their wine. And they're not calling to God. They're not bringing forth that which is righteous, that which is good. They're not even considering their God. So he pronounces a woe on them in verse 13. And we focus in on the last three verses as the last three important ones from this chapter. In 14, they have not cried unto me with their hearts. When they howled upon their beds, they assemble themselves for corn and wine, and they rebel against me. In other words, they get up, they're ready to eat, they're ready to drink, and they're ready to rebel. That's the picture. Though I have bound and strengthened their arms, yet do they imagine mischief against me. Even though God has trained them, even though God has strengthened them, yet all they can do is think of what evil they can do, how they can break his law. They return, but they don't return to the Most High God. They are like a deceitful bow. Their princes shall fall by the sword for the rage of their tongue. This shall be their derision in the land of Egypt. The picture you can gather is of a nation who has wholly gone and perverted their ways to where they think only of evil all day long. They're lazy, seeking self-pleasure, and have not considered God. Key verse 14. They have not cried unto me with their heart. Even though they howled upon their beds, they haven't cried unto me with their heart. God desires a clean heart, a heart that is wholly devoted unto him. And I wish I could remember that passage, but there is, the scripture says that it's that type of a heart that pleases God.
Somewhere it is written.
Somewhere in a good book it said.
Even the
Sorry.
author of Hebrews did that.
Sorry, out of movie experience here. But these things, this pleases God, is a penitent heart, one that cries out unto him. As David said in Psalm 51, create in me a clean heart and renew in me a right spirit. 51 verse 17. Thank you, CJ. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, thou wilt not despise. This is what pleases God. They howl on their beds, but they haven't cried with their heart. Kind of reminds me of how we are to worship God with our understanding and with our spirit. God says they cried on their beds, but they didn't cry with their heart. They got up and came together for food and wine and rebellion against me. key verse. Chapter 8.
Alrighty. Chapter 8 of Hosea is... The overall picture of it is God declaring his judgment upon the people and voicing why he is upset at Israel, what Israel has done to aggravate him. He says, "Set the trumpet to thy mouth. He shall come as an eagle against the house of the Lord, because they have transgressed my covenant and trespassed against my law. Israel shall cry unto me, My God, we knew thee." He says, "Sound the alarm to thy mouth. He shall come, Jehovah, as an eagle against the house of the Lord." In verse 3, he says, "Israel hath cast off the thing that is good. The enemy shall pursue him." Israel threw away the thing that was good for them, which is the Lord and the Lord's judgments. Israel completely cast it away from them. And what happens?
Move the Bible is what Sam says.
Yeah, I noticed that. My apologies. Just before he says, "The enemy shall pursue him. They have set up kings, but not by me. They have made princes, and I knew it not." He says, they have made kings, but they didn't do it by the Lord. The Lord didn't give his approval. They didn't seek for God's approval. They made princes, but I knew it not. It wasn't his choice. They didn't ask him. And they used their silver and gold. They made idols that they may be cut off. Here in 5, he says, "Thy calf, O Samaria, has cast thee off. Mine anger is kindled against them. How long will it be ere they attain to innocency? For from Israel was it also, the workman made it. Therefore it is not God. But the calf of Samaria shall be broken in pieces." Does anyone remember this calf? This calf that Israel made when they came out of Egypt. The idol. We're all familiar with how that went. Aaron threw the gold in and out popped a calf, right?
That's what he said.
We're all familiar with how that went, and that kindled the anger of the Lord. And, that calf was broken in pieces by Moses. But the point he's getting at is they made idols and separated themselves from God. And here we have verse 7, the key verse. "For they have sown the wind, and they shall reap the whirlwind." Can you picture reaching your hand into a bag of seeds and just pulling out air and throwing it on the ground? How pointless that is. They have sown the wind.
You've already said good night.
They got a whirlwind.
You want to start over
How
again?
destructive a whirlwind is a tornado.
Your sister interrupted me because she keeps wanting to hog the camera.
Merp. We have a good night break going on here.
No.
Good night to the sister.
Wait a minute. What? Start over. Night, night. Wait a minute. Not sweet dreams. Sleep. Sleep what? I'm going to nail your foot down. Well, come on. Sleep. What? Are you going to say anything? Okay. Okay, let's start over again. Give me a kiss. That's not how you start this. What's the first thing you say? Night, night. Sleep. No. Sleep. Height. Say it right. Say it right. Sleep. I. We. Dream. Love you too. Ah, slow it down and say it correct. Peace. Oh. Rest. God bless.
Bye. Bye. Have a good night.
Reba says good night. We have to make her slow down and actually pronounce it in order to try to build that exit ramp.
Yep.
So she'll
All right.
get going really, really fast, and she'll try to sneak by without doing that. And that's when we have to slow them down.
So, Hosea 8, verse 7, the key verse. They have sown winds. Israel sown winds, and they reap the whirlwinds. They reap a tornado. I mean, it kind of backfired, their whole plan there. It hath no stock. This whirlwind destroyed all the stocks of the food. The bud shall yield no meal, and if so, be it yield, the strangers shall swallow it up. All the stalks are damaged, and he says the bud shall yield no meal. So there's going to be no harvest. And what did survive, if so be it yield, the strangers swallowed up. The strangers eat it. Israel got no profit from their sowing of the wind. Israel.
Well, let me ask you, Hosea, does wind have any stock?
No.
I mean, if you sow the wind, does it even have seed?
That was kind of my point. They sowed nothing and they got nothing.
It's more of the idea that what they are doing is empty. What they are doing is vanity. And so when they cast out, their actions are empty. They're sowing wickedness, and so what they're going to reap is tenfold. It's like you're sowing the breeze, but here comes the tornado. So it's their actions are inadvertently creating a derecho, a huge, a hurricane force coming through that doesn't have stock, and what it's going to yield is not going to, like you said, be profitable. And those who are going to profit by it are going to be the strangers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea. You do that which you're trying to buy and sell, get gain, but what you're really doing is
At the end of the day, Israel's sitting there with nothing to sell and no gain.
nothing to show for what they've done except more trouble.
Mm-hmm.
It's way more trouble than it's worth. And remember, this is Israel is an agrarian society. They're very much based upon uh, the wheat and the barley, the vineyards,
They depended
and
very heavily upon their fields.
right. They're not as much so as a fishing society or as a trading merchant society. They're more agrarian. So he's using references that they would be
Yeah.
familiar with. Um, in one case, for example, they talk about the south wind being dry.
And they'd be familiar with that.
Right.
The desert winds.
Sam says, John chapter 3, Jesus uses the use of wind, but it's in a different context. Yes, it's a different context, because he's talking about spirit, not the actions of your or not the consequences of your actions.
Alrighty. Thank you. Continuing on in Hosea 8, verse 8, he says, Israel is swallowed up. Now shall they be among the Gentiles as a vessel wherein is no pleasure. Israel is surrounded. It is consumed. And now he says, you're just like the Gentiles. A vessel wherein is no pleasure. They're not pretty to look at. They're not pretty to use. They aren't effective. They don't hold anything. They're a worthless vessel, he says. They are gone up to Assyria, a wild ass alone by himself. Ephraim hath hired lovers. Israel ran off to Assyria. And what did Ephraim do? Hired lovers. He hired nations to protect him. Yea, though they have hired among the nations, now will I gather them, and they shall sorrow a little for the burden of the king of princes. They tried to hire other nations, as we know, all throughout 1st and 2nd Kings. They hire other kings and nations. Protect me, defend me, save me, don't kill me. They hired lovers. If they didn't give them the money, they weren't loved. And he says, because Ephraim hath made many altars to sin, altars shall be unto him to sin. They made many altars and sinned by them. Now altars are their sin. I have written to him the great things out of my law, but they were counted as a strange thing. God says, I gave them my law, all the good things I had, but they looked at it as if it just crawled out of the mud and came from outer space. They abhorred it, counted it as strange, weird, and unnatural. They didn't want it. Verse 14, for Israel hath forgotten his maker, and buildeth temples, and Judah hath multiplied fenced cities. But I will send a fire upon his cities, and it shall devour the palaces thereof. He says, it comes straight out, Israel forgot his maker, and buildeth temples, but not to his maker, because he forgot his maker. Judah has many fenced cities, many walled cities, They're in their cities, but God says, I will send a fire upon his cities, and it shall devour the palaces thereof. The Lord declares his judgment upon Israel and Judah due to their sins and such forth. Chapter 9.
So, because of this, at the beginning of chapter 9, really, it's hard to distinguish whether it is Hosea saying this or God saying this. The voice of God and his prophet are almost the same. Uh, but whichever it is, he says, Rejoice not, O Israel, for joy like other peoples, for you have played the harlot against you, God. You made love for hire and every threshing floor. There's no joy because of what they have done. Don't rejoice. You've done wrong. Verse 7, the days of punishment have come. Days of recompense have come. Israel knows they agreed to a covenant. In that covenant, God set the terms and conditions, and they know that they're in for it now. Israel knows the prophet is a fool. They have many false prophets. They're muttering foolish things. The, the man of spirit is mad because of your great iniquity and great hatred. Verse 10, here's how God found Israel. He says, I have found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first fruits on the fig tree in its season, but they went to Baal Peor. Stop right there. The first part of that verse is good. I found them. They were fruitful. They were like grapes in the wilderness, but that's a contrast word there. But they came to Bobby and consecrated themselves to the thing of shame. They corrupted that holiness and became detestable like the thing they loved. They loved the Baals, the idols. And then in verse 14, Hosea says, Give them, O Lord, what you will give them. Give them a miscarrying womb and a dry beast. God's going to punish them. God had already taken time to work with the nation and bring them out of the wilderness. And in verse 15 he says, All the wickedness is in Gilgal, for there I hated them. Because of their evil deeds, I will drive them from my house. I will love them no more. Stop and think about that statement. That's harsh. I will drive them out. Who does that make us think of directly? I will drive them out of my house. Well, Jesus drove out the money changers. I don't know if that's meant to be a parallel there, but when God's people don't do what God says, they're driven out of the presence of God. That's the idea. I will drive you out of my presence. I will love them no more. All their princes rebels. They rebelled. I love them. I'll drive them out. My God will cast them away, verse 17, because they did not obey him. He became the eternal author, Hebrews says. Hebrews 5:9 to them that obey him, right? Israel did not obey. You always have to obey God, which is interesting that the ESV says listen to him. To listen is to obey. Oh, you're trying to find my version. You're not gonna find it because I'm using the NKJV.
Oh, that would be nice to have known.
Sorry.
By the way, hearken in the KJV means to listen,
Yeah.
but it is, like you said, an obedient listening.
Right.
Um,
It's not just,
I,
hearing
I,
it and letting it go out one the other
I'd
ear.
like to, I'd like to point something out if I could before we move on.
Go ahead. I wasn't quite done, but go ahead.
When you said you asked a question back there in 15 about I will drive them out of mine house, what does that bring to mind? For you, it brought the money changers. Would Christ bringing out the money and driving out the money changers? To me, I see a different parallel, and what I see is a parallel to Adam and Eve being driven out of the garden
Definitely.
and Cain being driven out from the presence of the Lord. And especially when you compare verse 17 to Cain, really, because my God will cast them away because they didn't listen unto him. Cain didn't listen to God. God told him that if you do well, you will be accepted. If you don't, sin lieth at the door, and to him will be your desire, but you do thou rule over him. And Cain didn't listen. Instead, he chose to kill his brother. And so God drove him from the presence of God. And then you look at the last part of verse 17. They shall be wanderers among the nations,
Wow.
just like Cain wandered among the nations.
That's what the Jews would have thought of.
So what you
Really
see
good.
here is exactly that God is taking away his blessing from the children of Israel because they refuse to listen. And what we see is when Jesus became the author of eternal salvation, only those that listen to him um, are going to enjoy his blessings. Even the Jews who used to enjoy that status as God's chosen people have lost that status. And if they refuse to hearken unto him, are driven from his presence today.
Amen.
They are not accepted.
Teresa says she's back, had something to do. Sam says, what? Understand that God is saying they have cheated on their gods and went after false gods that has no substance, and they be like their false gods, fruitless and barren. Am I wrong?
I think you hit it right on the head. I think that's what uh, Jose is kind of the king of analogies. This is one big analogy. I mean, he still is married to Gomer, right? The wife of harlotry. At least two Ill, illegitimate children, maybe one. Um, yeah,
Um, Yeah, I believe Jezreel was actually legitimate. I don't. I'm not sure as to whether or not Gomer was a harlot before. I kind of think that if God said marry this wife of harlotry, she was a harlot before. But I do know that I believe that the language uh, in that first part of that chapter lends itself to show that Jezreel was legitimate, whereas uh, Leruhama and Loami were not, because of the way that their names are.
Right. Well, definitely Lomani because that means not my people. That would make sense if uh, he was actually uh, not her, not, not Hosea's son, not my people. And I guess what is he said in verse 6 because it doesn't say boy him a daughter, uh, that Rama is illegitimate too.
Laruhama, I am saying, is yes, not legitimate.
Is that because it doesn't say she bore him a daughter? It just says uh,
Right.
bore a daughter.
The wording is significant.
Right,
When God says something, He says it when He's specific. There's a reason. And so in verse 3, when it talks about Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son, and then 3 verses later says that she conceived again and bare a daughter.
right,
It's and yet she can, when she's weaned in verse 8, she conceives and bears another son, but it's not bearing him a son or bearing him a daughter. These are specific, there's a reason. And people, sometimes we get caught up on details, but there's a reason that every word is used within the scriptures.
that's right.
And so we need to be able to discern this. That's part of handling aright the word of God.
Yeah, God
So,
used Hosea and his life as an object lesson.
right, and so as we conclude chapter 9, I want to go back to verse 7 because that is my key verse. The days of punishment have come, the days of recompense have come. Israel knows. The prophet is a fool, the spiritual man is insane, because of the greatness of your iniquity and great enmity. God's judgment was coming because because Israel was disobedient. Where have we also heard that before? The wrath of God comes on the sons of disobedience, and oh no. Come
What?
on, Levi. The wrath of God comes on the sons of disobedience. Is that Peter?
Oh,
Or
good question.
sorry, I quoted it and then I was like, I have no idea where that's found.
Well, I'm sure that we'll find it.
Somewhere it is written.
Wrath of God.
And Sam says we need to listen to God. We can fall from grace.
Yeah, Colossians 3 and Ephesians 5 say, uh, Colossians 3 6 says, for which things sake the wrath of God cometh on the children of disobedience, Ephesians 5:8 says, "Let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of God upon the children of disobedience." And so do you guys see the connection? Obedience has always been required all throughout the book, all throughout this one book. It's obedience. Why do people think that the New Testament has changed from that pattern? It hasn't. Okay, that's my soapbox. Hosea 10.
If that's your soapbox, does that mean you're clean now?
Yes.
Okay.
He got off of it.
Does that
because
mean
the
he got
soap
dirty?
Yeah, apparently.
He got down and dirty, huh?
Oh no.
Hosea chapter 10. Here in Hosea 10, we have another analogy, and that is that of the empty vine. This one is rather unique because we remember we remember John chapter 15, was it?
15.
15, where Jesus says, I am the vine and ye are the branches. Well, God, through the prophet Hosea, says Israel is an empty vine. He bringeth forth fruit unto himself. According to the multitude of his fruit, he hath increased the altars. According to the goodness of his land, they have made goodly images. Their heart is divided, now shall they be found faulty. Well, he shall break down their altars. He shall spoil their images. Um, they say, we have no king because we feared not the Lord, verse 3. But what then should a king do to us? You get this picture. They're very much like Frank Sinatra, and I did it my way. Do any of us know what the Aramaic word for God is? Jerome asks. Um,
Go ahead, Levi. I know the Hebrew word for God.
and it's very close to the Aramaic. And that we would say Elohim, we could say Yahweh, we could say Yahweh Tzitzaboeth, we could say Eloah. There are multiple names for God, uh, dependent upon the scripture, the description that you would want to bring out.
That is a good study.
And it's a deep study.
You have the good one, the merciful one, the powerful one. Very many descriptions of God.
Something I'm probably not qualified to teach.
I
Hmm.
mean, there are a lot, and there are those that are single, as in single names, like we've already been saying. There are also Yahweh Tzitzaboeth, which are a combination names. You got Yahweh Elohim. So there's multiple ways to say it, and again, it's dependent upon the aspect that you're trying to bring out. Only Aramaic word that Jesus Christ would have used. No, Jesus would not have used Allah. Allah is not the Aramaic word for God. Allah is a perversion of the Hebrew Aramaic word. And it is not the God of the Bible. It is the God of Islam.
How about if you get with us in Messenger, Jerome? If you have more questions, we have a messenger, but we are trying to wrap up the study in Hosea 10. Is that alright with you guys?
Certainly.
Always feel free to drop by our messenger.
Yes, we would love to talk to you in private more about it if you would like to.
So we see that Israel here has um, lost their fear of God. In verse 3, because we feared not, we didn't revere the Lord. What then should a king do to us? Um, they've spoken these words, swearing falsely and making a covenant. So they basically lied when they made a covenant, and judgment is going to come upon them just like a hemlock in the furrows of the field. The As we go through chapter 10 of Hosea, God brings this depiction. They are completely empty. They've lost all their reverence for God. They have lost through their rebellion and their adultery and their um, wine bibbing and everything contrary to God. They have emptied out their side of the covenant. Her king is cut off. And speaking of Samaria, as the foam upon the water, there's nothing in foam. When you take foam out of the water, it's empty. It's just a bunch of bubbles. So God then presents a picture of him yearning for his people. Listen to verse 9. O Israel, you have sinned from the days of Gibeah, where there they stood. And the battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity did not overtake them. It is in my desire that I should chastise them, and the people shall be gathered against them. When shall they uh, bind themselves in their two furrows? God's rather not yearning for his people. I apologize that. It's more that he's ready to bring punishment on them and to bring Ephraim is as a heifer that is taught and loved to tread out the corn, but I passed over upon her fair neck. I will make Ephraim to ride. Judah shall plow, and Jacob shall break his clods. He says in verse 12, sow to yourselves in righteousness, reap in mercy, break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord till he come and rain righteousness upon you. It's time to change. It's time to be different. You've plowed wickedness, you've reaped iniquity, you've eaten the fruit of lies, because you did trust in your way, in the multitude of your mighty men. Now it's time to change and trust in me. Therefore shall a tumult arise among your people, and all the fortresses shall be spoiled, as Shalman spoiled Beth Arbel in the day of battle upon the mother, or the mother was dashed in pieces upon her children. The idea is judgment is coming. It's time to change your ways. You were empty. It's time to fill yourselves up now. The key verse of chapter 10 is verse 12. Sow to yourselves in righteousness, reap in mercy, break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord till he come and rain righteousness upon you.
It's time.
It's time to seek the Lord. And with that, I see that our time is up also.
We hope and pray that. Oh wait, that's your outro.
That's my outro. Yeah.
Don't be stealing other people's outros there, CJ.
Remember, here at CEM, we want to do three things. We want to glorify God first and foremost. We want to edify you, the saints. We are devoted to that. And we want to answer any spiritual questions you might have. Well, like Jerome, thank you for coming by. If you have more questions, please submit. We want to edify you and strengthen and deepen your relationship with God. Thanks, y'all. God bless.
Thank you all for your input, your questions, and comments. As always, it's been a pleasure. Till we meet again, God bless you all. Love you. Bye bye.
Make sure that you walk each day with the King. That way, whether we wake to serve him tomorrow here on this earth, or we wake to serve him up there tomorrow, you know where we'll be, because we'll see you then. God bless. I walk with the King
I walk with the King
to heavenly
to
land,
heavenly land.
the kingdom of
The
love,
kingdom of life,
the pathway of bright,
the
eternal His throne,
eternal His throne.
forever 'twill
Will
be.
be forever will be.
To mansions on
His
high,
mansions on
I
high.
walk never be. I walk with the King
I walk with the King
through pastures so green,
through pastures so green.
by quiet waters
Waters still, by
still,
quiet waters still.
to do His
Word
good
to do His good.
will. He lighteth the way
He lighteth the way
from darkness to day.
from darkness to day.
I'll hold to His hand. I walk with the King. I walk with the King. I walk with the King. Shall ever be, shall ever be. Glad tidings to bring. Glad tidings
And you bring
with blessings to see.
His
Blessings to see. His love floods my soul. His love floods my soul with glory divine. Glory divine. His riches and wealth. His riches and wealth. Treasures are mine. I walk with the King. I walk with the King. Through pastures so green. Through pastures so green. By quiet waters still. By quiet waters still. To do His good will. To do His good will. He lighteth the way. He lighteth the way.
way.
darkness today.
From darkness to day, out to his hand, out to his hand.
I walk
Thy King.
I walk with the King.
I walk with my King, the darkness
away, those
darkness away.
He is the true light, the kingdom of day. Someday onion show,
Someday you'll
I'll hear his voice say,
I'll hear his voice say,
come home, you're my
come
child.
home, come
It's evening past day. I walk with the King.
I walk with the King
Through pastures so green.
through pastures so green. Quiet waters still, like quiet waters still. To do his good will, to do his good will.
He lighteth the
He
way.
lighteth the way
From darkness to day.
from darkness to day. Out to his hand, out to his hand. I walk with the King.